I don't just talk about other people's stuff, I also make my own. Books in particular. To date, I have 4 books you can check out on Amazon. Operation Red Dragon: The Daikaiju Wars Part 1, Occult Mafia, Emerald of Maddox City, and the short story collection Assorted Absurdities, Tales of Kaiju Punk and Other Genres. Hop on down to the description for Amazon links to all 4 books. Enjoy whichever ones you read, and enjoy the video.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am the Omni viewer, and I know what some of you are wondering. Why didn't I do this video for Halloween? Well, that's because the figures were a pre-order that didn't arrive until late November. Better late than never, I say. So now that they're here, let's look at the latest wave of Universal Monster collectible figures.
As you can tell, these are not the NECA figures that are currently out on shelves. These guys are released by, Jada, Jaja Binks, however this is pronounced. Apparently I pronounced NECA incorrectly for the first little bit, so I'm not taking any chances. Anyway, the lineup includes Dracula, Frankenstein's Monster, the Bride of Frankenstein, and the creature from the Black Lagoon, the same lineup as the first wave of Bendy figs. The quartet has 3 things in common: similar points of articulation, themed accessories, and interchangeable heads and hands. All of these figures have multiple joints that allow for a full range of motion, though the arms are generally easier to pose than the legs.
As for specific details, let's look at them in chronological order, starting with the Prince of Darkness, Count Dracula.
As you can see, Dracula here is modeled after his 1931 design. However, it's not quite a one-to-one recreation of Bela Lugosi's complexion. The head is reminiscent of Bela, with the slicked-back hair, aquiline nose, and large eyes, but it's clearly not Bela's actual face. It was probably an issue with likeness rights or something, so they went with a look that's close enough recognizable without infringing anything. The rest of the figure is spot on, though. It's hard to mess up the look of a character who's essentially just a sharply dressed man, but the overall costume is very accurate, or at least accurate to the popular perception. You may notice that the interior of the cape is blood red, but the actual cape had more of a golden rose interior, not that anyone can tell in black and white.
Well, most people think it's red anyway, so red is what the figure gets.
Speaking of the cape, it's made of very thin fabric, and while I was messing with switching the heads, the collar did start to fray a bit. Theoretically, I think it can be removed. You can slip the band up over the head and 2 knobs on the back poke through to keep it in place, but given the fragility, I didn't want to try messing with it too much. Dracula's normal head has a semi-neutral expression, save for the intense glare in his eyes. The other head is what I'll call the attack head, as the Count's mouth is open to expose his fangs. Of the 2 heads, I personally prefer his resting back face. The attack head just doesn't look right to me. I think it's the fangs that do it. They make him look a bit buck-toothed. As for the hands, Dracula ships with a slightly closed right hand and open left hand attached. The right hand has thick fingers that make it look like a glove, so I have no problem switching that out for the alternate, which is open with extended fingers. The alternate left hand is also open like the attached left hand, but the fingers are extended in a different way. The main thing these alternate hands do is allow Dracula to interact with his accessories. The first accessory is a lit candle with a fancy holder. Being so small and thin, it came out a tiny bit misshapen, which I suspect is a common issue. The handle very loosely fits around the index and middle fingers of his left hand, so he's really just barely holding it. If anything, he looks like he's about to drop it. The other accessory is a solid brown vampire bat with wings extended. The feet are sculpted to fit around the index finger of Dracula's alternate right hand, allowing it to perch like a bird. I've never seen a real bat do this, but why get hung up on realism when discussing vampires? In truth, I think it looks neat. Posing Dracula with a bat gently perched on his hand makes for an instant gothic image that displays the Count's bond with the creatures of the night.
Up next, of course, is the Frankenstein Monster, whom I shall occasionally be referring to as Frank for the sake of brevity. Is that cool with you? No? Well, I'm gonna do it anyway.
Frank is the biggest and bulkiest of the figures, and he also has the stiffest leg joints, which I guess is fitting. You just won't be able to achieve many walking poses with him. They decided to go with green for the skin, which is no surprise at this point. People have colored the monster green for so long that Universal just decided to embrace it long ago. The overall look, particularly the outfit, draws from the first film, and comes in various shades of dark gray with a dark sea green jacket. In terms of film accuracy, the likeness still isn't exact, but Frank looks more like Boris Karloff than Dracula looks like Bela Lugosi.
Chalk all that up to heavy makeup, I guess.
One nice detail is that the face is asymmetrical. Karloff had false teeth on one side of his mouth that he removed for the movie to achieve that effect, and I like that it was recreated here. Frank ships with a neutral expression head and slightly closed detached hands. The alternate hands are open and what I would describe as grasping, similar to what you see in classic promo images of him. The alternate head features a crooked snarl that looks far better than Dracula's other expression. As for the accessories, you don't need to switch body parts out to implement them. Frank has 2 lengths of chain that can be shackled to his wrists. One is shorter than the other, so I guess which one you choose depends on how oppressed you want him to look. The clamps are plastic while the links are metal, and both chains look good overall. You can't really tell the different materials were used unless you get really close.
Moving on from the monster to his bride, the feminine face of horror among the Universal monsters.
In stark contrast with her husband, the bride is the overall smallest figure in the line, and she feels incredibly fragile. I was handling her with extreme care while getting these pictures, and she's still intact so far, but I urge collectors to be careful with her.
A gentleman must know how to treat a lady, after all, even if she is a stitched-together corpse.
Like Dracula, she has a thin fabric dress covering her tiny frame. Underneath, her body is fully sculpted to appear like she's wrapped in gauze, just like in the movie. Most people won't see that with the gown on, of course, but it's nice attention to detail all the same. The bride ships like the others with a neutral expression head attached, but her attached hands are open-palmed. Her alternate head is her hostile hissing expression, and both heads look good. In fact, the bride looks more like Elsa Lanchester than the previous 2 figures look like their actors. Maybe it's just my imagination, but I swear she has the most film-accurate likeness we've seen so far. As a result, both heads look good when attached. As for the hands, the alternate right is a closed fist with a dangling gauze strand, and the left alternate is... heavy metal devil horns? Huh. Never would have guessed the bride was a metalhead, but I suppose it makes sense. She does have the hair for it. The accessories are unusual among these figures. Since the bride doesn't really interact with anything in the movie, she comes with set dressing instead. These appear to be pieces of lab equipment, though their primary purpose appears to be restraint. Attached to the black spheres on top are metal chains and ribbons, though actually doing anything with them requires a lot of patience. You can just as easily frame the bride with them and call it a day.
And finally, we get to my personal favorite monster, the creature from the Black Lagoon.
Right off the bat, I can say he looks the most film accurate of the bunch, and he also has the widest range of motion. You can put his arms and legs in more positions than the other figures, and he's very good at holding them.
Must be the fact that he's not wearing any clothes that allows for uninhibited movement. Embrace naturism, and you too can be this flexible.
In terms of appearance, a few liberties are taken with the color. Normally when colorized, the creature is solid green with bright red lips and a yellow stomach. For this figure, the creature has alternating horizontal bands of light and medium green with a more subdued brownish red for the lips, occasional light brown patches in different areas, and no yellow anywhere. It's a different color scheme, but it works. In fact, the striping looks like natural camouflage to me, the sort of thing that would keep him hidden in a swampy tropical environment. The only thing that bothers me about the paint is that one of those light brown patches is right on the creature's butt, making it look like he forgot to wipe. You know, somebody had to intentionally apply paint there. That person had to have known, right? You can't put a big brown blotch on someone's bottom and not think it looks like he soiled himself. Right? Well, aside from that, I still think the paint looks good overall. The creature is the only figure in the line who doesn't ship with a neutral head attached. Rather, his attached head has an open mouth, the closest thing he has to an expression, and the alternate has a closed mouth. Both look fine, of course, as the difference is very minor. Interestingly, the creature only has one alternate hand. Normally, he has 2 open hands attached, but his left hand can be switched out for one that is slightly closed.
To find out why, we must look at the accessories.
Rather than an alternate right hand, the creature comes with the fossilized right hand of a long-dead gill man. It can be held in the left hand, and so can this harpoon gun. I know, that seems a bit weird since the harpoon gun is used against the creature rather than by him. Well, we can somewhat justify it by noting that towards the end of the first film, he does get his webbed mitts on the gun for an instant. He throws it away immediately, but he still has it, so maybe this is just from the alternate ending where he figures out how to use this weapon against the human invaders. It only fits loosely in his grip though, so don't try to force it. Lastly, he's got a square fishnet that can be draped over him, the material of which feels sturdier than Dracula's cape or the bride's gown, but I still recommend being careful with it. So are these figures worth it? Well, they're not like the NECA figures being released at the same time, but I'd say that's a good thing. They're not quite as expensive, at least not if you know where to look, and while they're not as detailed, I'd say they still capture the look and spirit of these monsters quite well. They're good quality overall, even if switching out the heads and hands can be a literal pain. Seriously, my fingers were sore for an hour after the photo shoot.
Even with a few minor issues, I'm still satisfied with how these turned out. And I'm looking forward to seeing if a second wave comes along to fill out the roster. Until such time as we meet again, this is the Omni Viewer signing off. You know, I really am happy I picked this guy up while he was still available, because creature merchandise is very hard to find. As soon as you see one, it's gone. Somebody's already snatched it up. You know, given how merchandise-driven Universal is, and given that creature merchandise sells like hotcakes, I'm surprised they haven't rebooted his films yet just based on that. One of life's great mysteries, I suppose.
Congratulations, you reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, you might want to consider supporting us on Patreon. Of course, the other way to support us is to go to Amazon and check out our books, Operation Red Dragon, The Daikaiju Wars Part 1, The Occult Mafia, Emerald of Maddox City, and Assorted Absurdities, Tales of Kaiju Punk and Other Genres. Also check the description for links to DeviantArt and other platforms we operate. Thank you all for watching. We'll see you next time.